Rob, from where you're laying, it may look like a couple years of bad investments. The truth is, you were retarded from the start. Doing the Mojave's work. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Larks Lamentation. This series we investigate factions from fiction to find where they went wrong and how they could have done their jobs better. Alright, so today we get the chance to go back to Fallout and take apart everybody's favorite post-apocalyptic industrialist, Mr. House. So take a sip of your Vault 13 canteen, because we're about to head to Fallout New Vegas. Freaking damn it! Anyway, in a post-apocalyptic wasteland of Fallout, there is one city that shines brighter than any other. One city that was mostly spared the wrath of nuclear hellfire. A city filled with sin and vice, and a lasting legacy of the world that once was. Las Vegas. Or now New Vegas. Call it whatever you like, it's the same difference. And anyway, since this is a Fallout game, we have a city that has value, and so there's going to be multiple factions that are going to fight over it so they can own it. Well, really, they're actually more after the Hoover Dam than anything else, but it's a bit of a package deal, buy one, get one free. So let's meet the parties that are fighting over the dam. In the west corner, we have the New California Republic, an honest attempt to try and rebuild an old world republic. They don't get everything right, but they're recognizable, and they have the best aesthetic in the game. Looking good! Considering their high tax rate, though, they'd best be able to afford some decent clothes. In the eastern corner, we have Caesar's Legion Loppers, or just the Legion for short. They dress like Roman soldiers, or attempt to.
Bruh, look at this dude. Wait till you see the... No. Look at the top of his head!
And embrace all the negatives of classical antiquity. But it's okay, fellas. Eddie here just read a philosophy book that seems to justify everything.
It's Hegelian dialectics.
Yeah, whatever. Then finally, we have the focus of the video, the technocrat himself, Mr. House. Oh, sorry, enough of that. Anyway, let's focus on Mr. House. He predates the Great War and is the only reason New Vegas is in good condition to start with. Alright, so let's back all the way up. No, farther back. Too far. There we go. See, Robert House was born in Las Vegas in the year 2020, so he's a year old right now. Enjoy that. Regardless, House had it rough. Even though he was born to a wealthy family, he quickly found himself an orphan and cheated out of his family inheritance by his half-brother. But he's not going to let that get him down. Young Robert applied himself in his studies, eventually graduating from the Commonwealth Institute of Technology. Yes, that institute.
It all makes sense now.
With a degree in hand, House went on to found Robco, the same Robco that makes the majorities of the robots in Fallout. So thanks to success, Robert became absurdly wealthy. In fact, he became one of the wealthiest men in the world, investing in numerous companies and gaining a ludicrous amount of military contracts. It seems everything was going right for dear Mr. House until the year 2065. Concerned with the rising tensions in the world, Mr. House ran several calculations and came to the conclusion that within 15 years, the world would be engulfed in the fires of nuclear Armageddon. Realizing that trying to save the United States in its entirety was a fool's errand, Mr. House went on to prepare to save one city to safeguard mankind in the world that follows. So for years to come, Mr. House began preparing for the bombs. And to his credit, Mr. House does a good job. He sets up several missile counter systems, including satellite lasers that shoot down nuclear missiles. Thanks to Mr. House, only a handful of missiles are able to strike the ground around Vegas and make the majority of the Mojave non-radioactive. Sadly for Mr. House, he had to strap himself into a life support pod and connected to his casino. The power started to flicker on and off due to the strain of having to shoot down so many bombs, and this eventually put him into a coma, until around 2138, where he just kind of waited around doing nothing until he saw the NCR fast approaching in 2274. In response, he immediately sent out Securitrons to, wash off the local tribes of New Vegas to make them more civilized looking, so he could attempt to make a treaty with the NCR rather than just handing New Vegas over, or worse, trying to war for it. Now, after the treaty was signed with the NCR, he spent the next 7 years trying to spruce up New Vegas Strip, making some money from the three families who he gave each a casino, and keeping the NCR at arm's length, because right now he kind of needs them, but more on that later.
I recruited a tribal force to supplement my Securitrons and renovated the strip just in time to welcome the NCR as it marched into the region. Instead of war, a treaty was negotiated, and the money started to pour in.
And so far, as a main plan, it's not too bad. He's got some things working for him. But what's the man's end game? Well, Mr. House wants New Vegas to be his, and his alone. He wants the NCR and the Legion gone, and all the families from the Strip to respect his authority above all else. And we're being honest here? That's not a bad goal. It sounds feasible. He could do it. So how does he plan on doing it? Why, that's quite simple. A software update. Hey, Mr. House, while you're at it, could you make one for the game as a whole? Because I think, fucking damn it! Yeah, the platinum chip that Benny shot you for at the beginning of the game is designed to upgrade the Securitrons and improve the electrical grid around New Vegas. And now the Securitrons, they now have access to missile launchers and grenade launchers and a couple other fun toys to make them less of a security force and more of a professional standing army. If Mr. House gets his hands on the chip, he can upgrade this army by also expanding it to allow it to take on the Legion and the NCR simultaneously, driving them both from the Mojave and securing him as the laissez-faire ruler of New Vegas. A true libertarian dream. What's to hate about that? Oh boy, where to begin? Before we dive into it, let me say that I know many players believe that Mr. House is not only the best choice for the Mojave, but the best choice for mankind. And if you inspect Mr. House, I can see where you're coming from. It's clear Mr. House does have a lot going for him. He's smart, he has business savvy, he's skilled at intrigue, and I'd be lying if I said his faction wasn't fun to play. There wasn't one point in the time where it's just like, well, this is just unentertaining. If you haven't played Mr. House run-through in Fallout New Vegas, I highly recommend you give it a go. But that doesn't mean that there aren't problems with him. And his problem? He's kind of retarded.
I have a lot of questions. Number one, how dare you?
No. Hear me out before you hit that dislike button. Let's say you are given 15 years and limitless resources just like Mr. House, and you get to pick one part of the United States to prepare for the apocalypse. Which part of the country would you spare from nuclear annihilation? Would you pick A, a lush area filled with an agricultural capacity strong enough to feed a growing population? B, a rich deposit of minerals and fuel that can be extracted and used to fuel machines of industry anew. C, a city with historic or government significance to allow for the infrastructure of old to pick back up the pieces of this new world. Or D, a gambling pit in the middle of the fricking desert. I'll give you a second to pick one. Now that you have chosen your area, tell me how many of you picked the fucking gambling hole in the middle of the sun-cursed desert? That's right, none of you.
You see this? Huh? See this? This is sand. Yeah. It's sand. You know it's going to be 100 years from now, huh? It's going to be sand! You live in a fucking desert!
Mr. House literally picked one of the worst locations in the United States to spare from hellfire. Let's go over Vegas's valuable resources that Mr. House saved. Gambling, prostitution, drugs, and Lake Mead along with the Hoover Dam. The only thing on that list worth saving is the dam and the lake. And there are thousands of other locations in the United States that would have provided just that and then some. I think Carlitos described it best.
It was heaven, until you find that all the glitter is made of broken dreams and all the praise hides a knife pointing at your ribs.
Personally, I would recommend somewhere along the Mississippi River Basin because of how much food can be grown there, but I'm sure several of you have selected your own parts of the country that you think would serve as an excellent place to restart mankind. Whatever you choose, it has to be better than fricking Las Vegas. The only reason why I can guess why Mr. House chose Vegas is because it's his hometown and he has a special place in his heart, which really irritates me considering Mr. House acts like he's above such petty caveman emotions.
That's because he ceased to be relevant when you recovered the platinum chip. Revenge doesn't interest me. Progress does. Sorry to deny you a moment of primate triumph, but you'll have to go elsewhere to sound your barbaric yawp.
Yeah, rules for thee, but not for me, hey, you asshole? Regardless, Mr. House still chose to save New Vegas, so we are stuck with New Vegas. So we gotta make the best of the situation, and so does Mr. House. So let's analyze his plan to take New Vegas for himself, as we see at the start of the game. How is it? Honestly, it's got some problems. Let's break it down into 6 simple-to-understand steps. Step 1, acquire chip. Step 2, take chip to Caesar's camp to activate the stored Securitrons. Step 3, ally with the surrounding tribes of your choice. Step 4, during the Battle of Hoover Dam, destroy both Legion and NCR forces. Step 5, profit. And Step 6, go into space. Yeah, this isn't a joke. He literally wants to go into orbit, but more on that later.
Give me 20 years, and I'll reignite the high-technology development sectors. 50 years, and I'll have people in orbit. 100 years, and my colony ships will be heading for the stars to search for planets unpolluted by the wrath and folly of a bygone generation.
Now, at first glance, you might think the plan looks pretty good. Minus that last part. That last part's just stupid, and like I said, we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. But there's, like I said, there's problems. Some larger than others. First, with the acquiring of the chip. Mr. House's plan solely hinges on the courier being willing to hand it over. He has very little recourse if you choose not to ally with him, because without the upgrades, the Securitrons really aren't that impressive. Let's move on to step 2. Assuming the person in possession of the chip decides to be loyal, how are you going to get them over to Caesar's camp and back alive if the courier hadn't been invited? I mean, let's say hypothetically Benny stayed loyal. How are you going to get him over to Caesar's camp without getting captured or killed? Now, some might say, well, he could use the Securitrons to make an opening. Yeah, but there goes the element of surprise he's going to need to secure Hoover Dam. Now, as for step 3, all of the surrounding tribes in New Vegas have their own issues, and getting all of them to agree to work with you or exterminating them requires the courier to be both completely loyal and powerful. Imagine asking a normal person like Benny to contact the Boomers. How well do you think that would go? Or better yet, let's think about Benny. Yeah, Benny being asked to exterminate the Brotherhood of Steel by himself.
Hey everyone! Dak says he's got this one! You knew it, bitches! Hey, Imperial Fleet! Get ready to suck some Dak!
Keep in mind, Mr. House does not consider the possibility of allying with the Brotherhood of Steel. Even if your courier joins the Brotherhood of Steel and they freaking love you, he still wants you to blow him up. And while we're on the subject of the Brotherhood of Steel, Mr. House, why would you not get the Brotherhood of Steel's help? I know you disagree with them on the use of technology, but they could be a huge benefit to you in the Battle of Hoover Dam. They already have a grudge against the NCR, they don't have any love for the Legion, and I'm sure you could work out some sort of deal with them. I get why you do what you do, but I think you should give the option to work with them. Even the NCR is begrudgingly willing to work with the Brotherhood, and they have a bad history with them. You just think they're techno-fetishists.
The world has no use for emotionally unstable techno-fetishists.
And I would like to remind you that you have a robot girlfriend, so you have very little room to talk.
Oh. Hey. This the week you guys were coming out?
Now, anyway, the problem with 4 and 5, we can scrunch this into one problem for both steps. The Battle of Hoover Dam. Why are you attacking the NCR? But they made me pay taxes, herder. Shut the hell up, you libertarian troglodyte. Remember, what is Vegas's main resource, Mr. House? That's right, gambling. Basically, tourism. Now remind me, Mr. House, who is New Vegas's biggest customer?
The NCR. A society of people desperate to experience comfort, ease, luxury. A society of customers.
That's right, it's the NCR. Correct. Now, are the NCR or any of their dollar bills going to you after you slaughtered an entire army of their sons and daughters? Yeah, it's going to be decades before the NCR will even consider allowing its people to travel back into the Mojave. Yes, but Mr. House accounts for that possibility. He makes sure that President Kimball doesn't die so that the blame for losing the Mojave will fall on him, not Mr. House. Besides, if you have enough speech, you can agree to the power sharing and water sharing treaty with the NCR to keep them happy. Now, maybe that compromise could work. For one thing, but you're still forgetting one major problem. You still attacked the NCR. NCR soldiers have been killed, and blood has been spilled now. It doesn't matter how much power or water you give them, you just spilled NCR blood. Ask the Great Khans and the Brotherhood of Steel how well that worked for them when it comes to diplomacy after the fact.
Coming and they don't stop 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 coming and they don't stop.
On top of that, from the NCR perspective, they held off the Legion at the Battle of Hoover Dam, only for Mr. House to show up and stab them in the back. Sure, President Kimball's political career just took a swan dive off Hoover Dam, but if you think the NCR is just going to casually accept Mr. House's hostile takeover of the Mojave when he's got NCR blood on his robotic hands, you've had one too many Kims, my friend.
Look, sweetie, there's the Securitrons that killed your older brother in the war. Now let's go gamble so we can finance your brother's murderers.
Yeah, I just don't see that happening, pal. Now, where was I? All right, New Vegas's fricked economy. Add insult to injury. The NCR economy that Mr. House is supposedly relying on isn't doing so hot right now. And getting pushed out of the Mojave is going to tank their economy even further. So even if they wanted to allow tourists in the Mojave, it's unlikely many could afford to do so. So yeah, instead of seeing New Vegas's economy dip for 6 months to a year, you're probably looking closer to a couple decades. Yeah, not a smart move. But now some of you might be thinking, well, people might come from the east. Unlikely. Caesar is either dead or about to die, and once he's gone, his great empire to the east is going to crumble into several warring factions, all vying for supremacy. Not exactly a great place to attract tourists from. Face it, the NCR is the only faction in Fallout that has citizens who have the disposable income to produce tourists, and Mr. House just shot at them. So who does that leave you with? The odd trader who managed to slip through? Will that be enough to fuel the economy that is Vegas? But that's okay. Mr. House can wait for things to improve. He is immortal as long as he's hooked up to the Lucky 38. Yeah, but the citizens of New Vegas aren't immortal, and as their lifestyle degrades from living the casino high life back to tribal living, they will curse Mr. House and either leave the Mojave or try and rebel in some way, though any rebellion would be crushed by the upgraded Securitrons. The result, regardless, is the same, a Vegas that is going to lag behind of its true potential. And now, I have to address it. Step 6, going into space.
I want to go into space.
Rob. Can I call you Rob? Let's say everything works smoothly for you. And it won't, but let's say that it does. Where on Earth are you going to get the resources required to go into space? Not just launch a rocket or start colonizing other planets. It took the United States and the Soviet Union untold amounts of money and resources to get their space programs off the ground. And you're going to do it with just the resources of Clark County, Nevada? Do you have any idea what it takes to produce the equipment necessary for space travel? Oh, What am I talking about? Of course you are. You actually worked with the United States government before the bombs fell. So you should know how crazy it is for you to say this. Just leaving orbit is a Herculean task, but you're going to do it fueled by the economy of a crippled gambling den? Rob, how can you be so simultaneously smart, yet so mind-bogglingly stupid? Ugh. Yeah, and before any of you tell me that he does do it, and that's how we get the game The Outer Worlds, I want you to look at The Outer Worlds very carefully and tell me that's truly the savior of mankind, and that clearly has Mr. House's fingerprints on it. Yeah, not exact. No, just no. Now, after all that, I know what several of you are probably thinking. You're probably thinking along the lines of Mr. House may not be perfect, but he's still the best option for New Vegas. Kinda. I would put him as option 2, if I'm being generous, tied for number 1 at best. Despite the issues with his overall plan, he still is pretty good, and like I said, he's fun to play. There is a little bit of joy of just going full libertarian and just going where the money leads you. Anyway, let's look at the other factions to compare him to. He's definitely better than the Legion just by longevity alone. He's better than a free New Vegas run by the Courier. See, that has all the problems of Mr. House, and then some. So if you want to go free Vegas route, just go with Mr. House. Trust me, he can manage it better than you can, I promise. But now that leaves the NCR. Is he better than the NCR? Taxation jokes aside, not really. While the NCR has problems, and a lot of them, an episode for later, I promise, they're still better than Mr. House and his New Vegas. But the NCR is corrupt. Yes, they are. But tell me, when did Vegas become a beacon of loyalty? Because I missed that in the game. And tell me, how are the cannibals and backstabbers doing? But the NCR brings people into the Republic against their will. Yeah, because the heavily armored Securitrons are going to let the citizens of New Vegas have a choice to ignore Mr. House's rules. But the NCR economy is struggling. Yes, I know, and that is why Mr. House should avoid attacking them at all costs, because he needs what's left of that broken economy to fuel Vegas. But the NCR has taxes! You're going to need more than that to work around the idiotic parts of Mr. House's plan. Besides, at the end of the day, the NCR will more than likely outlast Mr. House, life support system and all.
Liar!
Oh, right. You probably just did a spit take there. Allow me to explain. The NCR controls massive amounts of territories and is clearly capable of some industry on a large scale. New Vegas has no manufacturing capabilities to speak of and shows no capacity to set any up. If Vegas had significant manufacturing capacity before the war, it's likely Mr. House would have developed the platinum chip in Vegas rather than outsourcing it out of town, which caused this mess in the first place. Again, Vegas was a very stupid choice. If you wanted a robot army, why didn't you pick somewhere that already had a manufacturing capability or was close to resources you could extract to use? I'm sorry, that's my biggest problem with Mr. House, but I've already said my piece on that. Anyway, speaking on the subject of Securitrons, the backbone that he's going to be using to fight the NCR if they ever try and attack again, they're awful.
What is this? What is this thing? Why is your main combat robot a top-heavy mess on a single wheel? You had better options. See, look at these. These are good. These are serviceable. Why did we go for the pogo stick on wheels? All the NCR have to do for round 2 is just stay behind on elevated mountainous terrain. You know New Vegas has it around the area. And just wait there because the Securitrons can't climb. Once you Mr. House, you designed Liberty Prime, but this was your go-to weapon? You can do better. Anyway, once one Securitron is destroyed, it can be scrapped for parts, but he is not shown to have the manufacturing capacity to build a new one. This is how the NCR were able to overcome their better armed and trained Brotherhood of Steel. They were able to play the game of attrition better. Plus, they could just ignore the Mojave entirely with the Legion's main force in ruins. And Caesar is not long for this world. The NCR will be able to position themselves over the next decade to assume control over the rest of the American Southwest, isolating the Mojave, making them an enclave. No, not that enclave, just, yes,
an enclave in the middle of the Southwest. And all they have to do at that point is just embargo New Vegas and let Mr. House's people starve to death. To wrap up, Mr. House, you got a lot going for you, but damn did you overlook some serious issues. Mr. House, you gotta do better. But you know, Mr. House, you're not the railroad. You are not beyond saving. I don't have to do much to fix your plan. You've laid good groundwork, but we just gotta do a little bit of tweaking. And actually, you don't have to tweak too much. Here's how we fix your master plan. First things first, don't attack the NCR. Ever. But how will we drive them out of the Mojave?
That's the neat thing. You don't.
Yeah, don't drive the NCR. Let the Legion do that for you. You see, even without Mr. House's intervention, the NCR's position on the dam isn't exactly what you'd call good. In fact, the head of the NCR Rangers devised a plan to evacuate the majority of the NCR soldiers and civilians while the Rangers martyr themselves in a rearguard action against the Legion. The Ranger leader does this because he views the NCR situation in the Mojave as hopeless. All you have to do is ally with him in secret. Okay, hold on, before we go any further. I want to specify, because I think I confused some people previously, this is not something you can do in-game. It would be cool if you could do this in-game, but this is not something you can do in-game. This is what should have been done, not what can be, what should have been done. Now, let's continue. All you have to do would be to ally with him in secret, continue to cause confusion amongst the NCR ranks, making sure that the NCR is nice and easy for the Legion to attack. And when the Legion does attack the dam and rout the NCR, then as the NCR are in full retreat, the Securitrons will sweep in from behind, making short work of the Legion. Now, as for what's left of the NCR forces, they're already retreating out of the Mojave, and they will have to concede the deserted wasteland to you. They won't be able to do shit about it. Because in this plan, or this version of Mr. House's plan, he hasn't attacked the NCR. To the average Californian, instead of him looking like Mr. House stabbed them in the back, they'll see Mr. House having to exert control over territory the NCR had deserted. And the NCR, if they try to come back and attempt to reinforce the old treaty that Mr. House signed, Mr. House can point out they gave up all claim to the Mojave when they evacuated their positions, leaving New Vegas to defend itself. Mr. House will then get the Mojave, and the NCR citizens won't view New Vegas as an enemy state, leaving nothing to stop trade and tourism, now completely in Mr. House's favor. And in this plan, both countries can thrive. Mr. House gets everything he wants: power, water, a thriving economy. And now, the NCR population gets what they want. They no longer have to worry about sending more men to die in the meat grinder that is the Mojave. And their favorite gambling den is ready and open for business, with no moral complications as far as they know aside. You see, Mr. House, that is how you stack the cards in your favor. But we do also need to talk a little bit about Mr. House's freaking damn it!
Okay, and I think Lark has had enough. One too many. One too many moments of being kicked out of the game for him. While he goes and mentally reasserts himself, takes a breather, I suppose I'll end the video here for you guys. Thanks so much for watching Larks Lamentation, the episode about Mr. House. This was a fun one, and I know I sure learned a lot. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing so that you can stay up to date on all the videos that are released on this channel, not just Larks, but mine as well. Be staying tuned, guys, because I'm going to release a poll soon talking about what Lark will work on next for the next Lark Lamentation. And also, don't forget to comment about your thoughts on the video. Please be respectful. I know there are a lot of Mr. House fanboys out there, so please be respectful to Lark and myself and to other people who are more open-minded. And leave a like if you enjoyed the video. And I will see you in our next video. Take care.